Welcome back and live now from Fox on the South Carolina Democratic primary election day. Let's get you right into the results. Right now, this is where things stand. 12% of the results have been tallied. Biden up 97%, 1% going to Phillips, 2% to Williamson. It appears that Williamson and Phillips have swapped places. Before they were 2% and 1%. Now they're 1% and 2%. Regardless, Biden in a commanding lead, and this is pretty much exactly what we expected. A very quick call to this race in South Carolina. It is not the primary for both the Republicans and the Democrats. The Republican primary will be later toward the latter part of this month, but the Democratic results coming in just about how we expected them to. We have the perfect person standing by right now to discuss all this. We want to bring on political analyst Brian Sobel, who's joining us right now. And Brian, 97% of the votes. That's exactly what we expected in South Carolina today, right?
A real shocker, Austin. But it is important because for the president, he receives 55 delegate votes going to the convention, and so for Democrats, for President Biden, it's a good thing. But as you point out, no surprise today in South Carolina on the Democrat side of the aisle. Of course, all eyes on South Carolina on February 24th for the Republican primary.
Yeah, so and I do want to touch on the Republican primary coming up in a few weeks, but I also just want to ask Biden, not in South Carolina today. We just saw him at LAX. He just landed. He will eventually be making a swing through Vegas as well. Is this pretty much just a general election strategy for Biden at this point?
Absolutely. He knows where he's doing well. His people know where he's doing well. And there's a lot of campaigning to come, particularly as we start moving towards the general. So he's busy doing other things. And we're going to probably see this through the primary season. There's just is no competition on the Democrat side of the aisle. So the president gets to pick his schedule as he sees fit.
So I'll ask you the same question that I've been asking some of the other guests we've had on today, and I'll actually put up the results because, it's a lopsided race in a big way. Why do people like Dean Phillips and Marianne Williamson stay in races like this oftentimes when they really have little shot?
Oftentimes, Austin, it has to do with name recognition and getting their voice out to people. They aren't raising gobs of money, but they can stay somewhat on the periphery of the national discussion. And so if Phillips or Williamson have future plans, this would be a good strategy. You're really playing with house money at this point.
When we talk about, and I do want to move to the Republican side of things because that's where, it's really going to pick up and there will be a lot of interest around South Carolina on the 24th. When we talk about Nikki Haley versus Donald Trump, what's the latest that we're seeing out of South Carolina? Does it look like we might have some competition there?
It depends on who you're listening to and which polling you're watching. It's the old line is that polls don't vote, and Nikki Haley is certainly hoping that's the case. But if you look at a couple of things that have gone on in South Carolina, it doesn't look particularly good for her from the standpoint of endorsements that have gone to the president. If you think about it, the governor of the state of South Carolina, both senators, Lindsey Graham, Tim Scott, 5 of the 6 members of the House of Representatives, 66 members of the state legislature have all endorsed Donald Trump. That doesn't leave a whole lot for Nikki Haley to brag about. And frankly, she has to even be hurt, I would think, by some of it, including the fact that in 2012, she's the one who appointed Tim Scott to the United States Senate from South Carolina, and the repayment in years later is I can't endorse you. I'm going to go with the candidate who was there before.
When we talk about Haley's chances, is there any path in which you see Nikki Haley actually bowing out of this race before South Carolina to save herself from losing in her home state?
She's not leaving before the primary. She has to battle it out in South Carolina. Then I think she has to take a very important decision. If she does reasonably well in South Carolina, and to me that's within 10, 12 points of President Trump, then I think she can make a case. Hey, he had the a stacked deck that he was working with, and it worked really well for him. But look at how well I did. I think the end of the line for her, if she doesn't pick up tons of speed, is Super Tuesday in March, and that will seal her fate. But between now and then, there's an outside chance that she could gain some momentum. And with everything going on in Trump world in terms of the indictments and everything else, I think there's some calculus within the Haley camp that Donald Trump may step on a rusty nail, and it may cost him dearly. But we'll see.
And that's something we're going to be following closely, of course. I do want to ask about Donald Trump. We talk about Biden really considering this and the strategy he's using right now really being a general election strategy. The strategy that we've been seeing from Donald Trump, would you classify that as a general election strategy so far from what we've seen?
Yes, because he hasn't had a substantive opposition. And until Nikki Haley started emerging as a candidate that you had to take notice of, until that point, Donald Trump was swatting people like Ron DeSantis away without a problem. Ramaswamy, these other people, Chris Christie, they all went to the side really, really quickly. And that was because polling, which is so dominant in the United States, was saying that Donald Trump was the odds-on favorite by a lot to be nominated. And so money dries up, and then you start losing a purpose for continuing to show up. Nikki Haley is the one person that stayed in the race saying, hey, history shows us that on occasion, somebody comes out of the back of the pack and finds a way to the front of the pack. And that's what she's hoping for.
And this is the last thing I want to ask before we go, what's your top 2024 storyline that you're going to be following in the immediate future as we continue on with primary season? Is it the South Carolina GOP primary that you're going to be looking ahead to, or is it something else?
No, you've put your finger on it, Austin. I think the wall, the wall is South Carolina. And again, Nikki Haley may not climb over the wall, but if she climbs pretty far high up on the wall, to extend that metaphor, I think she can stay in it. She's raising some money, and that will be the story. And then if she can goad Donald Trump into debates or into a position where he is doing what Donald Trump does best, which is really belittling his opponents and that sort of thing, she may pick up some steam. We'll have to see. And it really comes down to Donald Trump keeping an eye on the ball.
Political analyst Brian Sobel joining us as always. We appreciate your analysis. Have a good rest of your weekend.
You too, Austin.